Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we're going to be diving into our NFL Mock Draft 3.0 here after we've had some big trades in the National Football League, some quarterback movement, and of course the beginning of NFL free agency and teams starting to address positions of need ahead of the draft. We've got players moving to teams left and right, re-signing contracts with others. It's been really entertaining to watch here throughout the early stages of that process. But I thought we'd take a look here at the top of this week at another mock draft. I will be doing one of these just about every week here as we approach the actual NFL draft. So if that's something you're interested in, drop down and click that subscribe button. Also turn that bell on so you're never late around here. Also, we're putting out Dynasty fantasy football content here. I'm trying to get that stuff ramped up right now, being on spring break and having a little bit of time to kick back and get some stuff together for you guys. So also go check out our socials, our Twitter at Fantasy Sizzle, Instagram account, and the community Discord in the description of today's episode. But with that being said, let's not waste any time and let's get into my new first overall pick. Alrighty, here we go. So we've got a lot of changes to the board after some things have been addressed in free agency today. The first thing that I noticed when taking a look at the draft board today was the attention the Jacksonville Jaguars made to the offensive line position group. Franchise tagging Cam Robinson, adding in star Washington Commanders interior offensive lineman Brandon Scherff. So to me, my former pick in the last two mock drafts here was Evan Neal, the stalwart left tackle out of the University of Alabama. But I'm switching things up here. I think that the moves of the Jacksonville Jaguars to address that offensive line position indicate to me that Aidan Hutchinson may be the draft choice here. I would still love to see this organization go out and make a move to get Evan Neal and continue to tie up that offensive front and potentially have a standout left and right tackle. However, I think that right now, as I said, those actions are indicating that Aidan Hutchinson might be the more likely pick at this point in time. The star pass rusher out of the University of Michigan. I think this is a day one impact player with a high motor, and that obviously complicates things as we move into the second overall pick with the Detroit Lions here. So at this point in time, if this were the situation to play out, I do have the Lions taking Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. Obviously 6'4", 220 pounds, rangy. Again, as I stated in the last mock draft that happened immediately after the NFL Combine, I wasn't blown away by his 40 times. The fact that he was running, nearly a 4.6 40-yard dash wasn't something that I expected. I thought he would time a little bit better than that. However, this is still a player that moves exceptionally well for a guy of his size and has super dynamic tools and abilities. And I went back and forth here, considering the likes of Keywon, Thibodeaux, Kyle Hamilton, obviously the draft choice that we went with, even Malik Willis, a potential quarterback option for this football team. But at the end of the day, Jared Goff's cap hit is still over $30 million for this season. That's a large lump sum of money to pay a guy who you don't plan on having potentially as the starter for the entirety of your season. And I just see Kyle Hamilton here as a piece the Lions could really build around as the centerpiece and the core of this defensive unit going forward. They did just re-sign Tracy Walker today in free agency on a 3-year deal, but Kyle Hamilton clearly is a large improvement at that position. And I think that, again, with his versatility, there's so much stuff you can do with him, from having him guard over the top to line up down in the slot, play a nickel position, even bring him off the edge as a blitzer. There's a lot of things that Dan Campbell could do with this defense, and going Kyle Hamilton at number 2. I do think this puts the Lions in a bit of a sticky situation, though, if Aidan Hutchinson were to go number 1, because I think that's the dream selection for the Lions, who plan to release Trey Flowers on the first day of the league year here as we get into things in free agency. That leaves Evan Neal, my former first overall pick, falling into the lap of the Houston Texans. You've got some uncertainty whether or not Laramie Tunsil is in the long-term plans of this team. However, with Laramie Tunsil or without him, I don't think Titus Howard has been any sort of an elite level edge protector for this Texans franchise. I think that if you have Laramie Tunsil, worst case scenario, you kick Evan Neal over to the right side and have him play over there. Or if you end up moving on from Laramie Tunsil, which would be classic Houston Texans giving up, 2 first-round picks and a large amount of draft capital to acquire his services just a couple seasons back, you can replace him here with a stalwart left tackle, a guy that I see as the top pass protector in this draft, an immovable force, and someone that has all of the potential traits, athleticism, and obviously size components that you look for in a a guy who can totally shut down an opposing team's best pass rusher. So Evan Neal, I think, would be a slam dunk pick for the Texans here. It's very, very possible that we see this team have multiple more selections in the first round. The reason I say that, you look at a team like Philadelphia that could be in the mix for a Deshaun Watson, obviously trading him away from the Texans. And obviously we've heard about the Panthers and the Saints that have been rumored to be in on that situation as well. So keep an eye on the Texans here as we move forward this offseason. At number 4, I've got Ike Ekwonu, the offensive tackle from NC State, heading to the New York Jets. Pair him up with Mekhi Becton. I think that this is your best chance to surround Zach Wilson with the infrastructure to succeed. You might want to add more depth and more playmakers, to the boundary of this offense and give him some more targets to work with, although I did really like the Elijah Moore selection, the Corey Davis signing last year. I think you got to protect Zach Wilson. And for a quarterback who got nicked a little bit in his college career, missed a few games in his rookie season, I think you go out, you get him his second bookend tackle here in Ike Ekwonu. You can decide in training camp in the preseason which guy you want playing the left and which guy you want playing the right side. I think this is how you set that quarterback up for success, though, and make sure Zach Wilson has the surrounding parts he needs. This has Kayvon Thibodeaux sliding a little bit farther than I've had him going in my previous 2 mocks at number 3 to the Texans. And this gives the Giants the opportunity to address the edge rusher position and not only improve their pass rush, but also their run stop as well. I think that Kayvon Thibodeaux is someone who is going to play a very integral role in both phases of the game. You then add Thibodeaux to this defense, and you get a front with Leonard Williams, Azeez Ojulari, and now Kayvon Thibodeaux rushing the passer. Yes, exactly. And getting some heat on that opposing QB. I know that offensive line is a huge area that needs to be addressed here, but I don't see a reason why the Giants, after my top 2 tackles in this draft class, go at number 3 and 4, for them to reach here when you have a pick right there at number 7. So go out there, get another core piece for the franchise on the defensive side of the ball. I think this would be a nice selection for the Giants at 5. At number 6, I have Charles Cross, a underrated pass protector in my book, someone who has a lot better feet than I've seen him get credit for in the greater draft community. I think his feet are actually quite above average in how he moves, and I think that he sets back and sinks his hips really well in the pass game, allows the quarterback to have extra time in the pocket, and I think that Charles Cross, for a Panthers team that desperately needs help at the offensive line position, you've got Taylor Moton on one side, but you could certainly use an upgrade at the other side. The Panthers, minutes before recording this episode, actually just signed Austin Blythe, I believe it was, the interior offensive lineman from the LA Rams, the Super Bowl champions. That was a nice add there, but I think Cross adds that extra value, obviously being a player of great positional need to protect whoever that quarterback is, potentially Deshaun Watson. However, I think if you're getting Deshaun Watson here, this number 6 pick might not any longer belong to the Panthers, who I'm hearing, I'm not in touch with these teams. I wish I were. But the reports right now are making heavily aggressive offers to the Texans, so that would certainly be something fun to watch with the weapons they have for him to utilize there. At 7, we kind of hinted on this, Trevor Penning. No reason to reach up at number 5 when you can get him here at 7, which this might be a little bit of a reach to begin with, but I think it is something the Giants are very committed to addressing this offseason. They are not going to let Daniel Jones walk in there and get absolutely annihilated by opposing pass rushes next year. You've got Andrew Thomas, who's a quality starting left tackle out of the University of Georgia. He's been in the league for a couple seasons now. Go out here to UNI, get Trevor Penning, someone who is an absolute mauler in the run game, plays like an absolute meathead, and obviously there are some things you don't like to see with, he could draw some taunting penalties at the next level with his chippy play style and blocking through the whistle. Opposing defensive players are not going to like Penning. However, this is the type of culture changer that you could use to really upgrade the physicality of this Giants front that has been really abysmal for the past few seasons, and something that has been a head scratcher as to why this position hasn't been addressed more aggressively in years past. Treylon Burks, my first wide receiver off the board now, heads to the Atlanta Falcons, who I've had going defensive back in the previous 2 drafts, but now it seems all too obvious to me this team has to go wide receiver. Their wide receiver depth has basically vanished. From having Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage, There's a chance that none of those three players are on the field for the Falcons next season. Obviously, Calvin Ridley is still under contract for the Atlanta Falcons, but suspended for playing on FanDuel betting in same-game parlays. So rest in peace, Calvin Ridley fantasy season 2022. However, I think you've got a shot here to go out and get a really dynamic playmaker in Treylon Burks, trying a 4.55 40-yard dash, someone who can play physically and catch the pass at the line of scrimmage and take off from there. Use that big frame that he has to impose his will on defensive backs as he molds his game, or would like to, after Deebo Samuel, and be that next wide back, if you will. I believe that was the nickname that Deebo coined earlier on in the 2021 season. But you get yourself a playmaker here, and you can't just rely on an aging Matt Ryan with a terrible offensive line and just Kyle Pitts to get the job done. Russell Gage is a free agent. Obviously, Julio's in Tennessee now. So this is a major position of need after it being a strength for this team just a couple seasons back. And here it is. At number 9, you were probably expecting to see this post-Russell Wilson trade heading to the Denver Broncos. Now the Seahawks own that number 9 pick. It almost seems too perfect, too good to be true that the Seahawks would get a player like Malik Willis out of the University of Liberty, a guy who essentially has a lot of similarities. Is a mobile quarterback, can get outside the pocket. I would say that him and Russell still have quite a bit of differences in their game, obviously, but the mobility is something that is a common ground. Russ, obviously, is probably a better deep ball passer. Their releases are extremely different, and their throwing motions are as well. Malik Willis has one of the more unique throwing motions, I would say, in this draft class, something that I've been very interested in studying on tape. However, I think this gives this team a chance. I don't think that Drew Lock is necessarily going to be the QB of the future, and if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, if you draft Malik Willis here at number 9, you're going to be super happy at the end of the day walking away with another first-round pick from Denver next season. I believe they got their second-round pick this year and next year as well, and then obviously accruing Noah Fant and potentially a decent backup in Drew Lock as well, but again, you don't want him to be your franchise quarterback. So this would be the best case scenario. I'm not sure if Seattle's going to have to trade up even higher if Malik is their guy, and that's how they want to enter this season. Again, I did really mull over having Malik go at number 2 to the Lions. However, that cap hit to Jared Goff and just the uncertainty of what Detroit values Malik Willis of at this time really resulted in him falling to this point. I've had him mocked to Carolina in the past. I think that Carolina would select Malik Willis if they are not in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. So a lot of stuff to consider there at that number 9 pick. A lot of things needs to happen for Seattle to get him if they want to do so. And obviously a lot more to break down here as we approach the draft. So Ahmad Gardner, Sauce Gardner at the number 10 spot, runs a 4.41 40-yard dash. A guy at this height, nearly 6'3" tall. And with the length that he has, could be an absolute shutdown corner. I do have corners in this draft that I am a little bit more confident on. However, I think that the consensus league-wide right now is that Ahmad Gardner is probably going to be the universal outside boundary corner number 1 in this class. I might prefer Derek Stingley. I really, really like Trent McDuffie as well. I think that Gardner gets a little bit too physical, gets a little bit too handsy, holds, and roughs up the receiver a bit much. I think he's going to get dinged for a lot of PI and holding calls at the next level, but that's just me. He has all the tools, all the traits you look for in a corner, and if he can put it all together, he truly could be a special player. I just do have some things that I worry about a little bit, but again, Ahmad Gardner could be a special player. At number 11 here, I've got the Washington Commanders, pivoting from previous episodes here with the positions addressed. Now you've got Carson Wentz. You've got yourself a little bit more opportunity to have a higher ceiling in the passing game. You're still not looking at yourself as a team that has an elite quarterback, but you do have someone that can launch the ball downfield, improvise out of the pocket, and make plays. You've got a really solid playmaker in Terry McLaurin, someone who has an elite athletic profile. Get Drake London here. Get Carson Wentz a big-bodied target. We've seen him have success with the likes of Alshon Jeffrey. You go back to just last season with Michael Pittman on the Colts. This could be a combination that I would think to be very successful. You've got some nice playmakers in this offense. Add another piece here, and then between him, Logan Thomas, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson on the backfield, you're starting to work with some real stuff here. One big loss, though, was Brandon Scherf, who I think is going to be a big hit for this team. I considered Kenyon Green here out of Texas A&M, but I thought that Drake London might be slightly more valuable in the short term. At number 12 here, I've got the Minnesota Vikings going Jermaine Johnson II, the edge out of Florida State. Now, In my last mock draft, I had Jermaine Johnson pop up into the late first round. I've been slowly growing on him a little bit here. I'm not quite as sold as a lot of the draft community has been post-combine. Obviously, he looked very nice and tested well and made a name for himself after transferring from Georgia to FSU and will now become a first-round draft pick. I do think he can be a valuable part to this Minnesota Vikings defense. I think right here at this number 12 spot would be perfect for him. You you kill two birds with one stone, essentially. So you've got a need to shore up the secondary of this team, but if you can add Jermaine Johnson into the mix here with Danielle Hunter healthy and get a really solid pass rush going, I think that you can kind of limit the time that back end has to cover opposing wide receivers, and what becomes a weakness now becomes a little bit less so and can start to become more of a strength if you address those defensive back spots later in this draft. So I think Jermaine Johnson could be a very valuable piece here. Another name I'd look out for is Travon Walker. Some sort of edge threat could be in play here for the Vikings at 12. I've had them mock Trent McDuffie the last 2 times around here, and I actually really love that pick. I think Trent McDuffie is going to be a really, really good defensive back in the league, but I wanted to change things up here and give a different angle for Vikings fans out there tuning into today's episode. Speaking of the devil, Travon Walker here at number 13, a very versatile piece up front that can play in the interior or exterior of the Browns' defensive front. I think this is a home run pick for the Browns that essentially are a very, very deep team. You could argue for a wide receiver here if you wanted Garrett Wilson, who's still on the board. The team just went out and traded for Amari Cooper. I'm really excited about that move. To really see, is Baker Mayfield truly the quarterback one for this team and the franchise QB going forward? I personally am a Baker doubter, but I'm not going to slam on him in this episode. That's a story for another time for those of you who are Baker fans. So I think that Amari Cooper is a really, really solid route runner, though, and for someone who you could argue made Dak Prescott a much better passer, more efficient and more productive QB, I think it's a great opportunity for Baker Mayfield to prove people like myself wrong and take that next step forward to proving he is a franchise quarterback. So a little bit besides the point of the actual selection here, but Travon Walker for a really, really good roster that doesn't have many holes, fills a position of need, and edge depth is always something that you can use. Just look at the Tampa Bay Bucks last season that went out and addressed that in the first round after already having a really solid edge rushing rotation with Joe Tryon with the last pick in the first round last season. At 14 here, Derek Stingley Jr., someone I've had going higher in my drafts, falls into the lap of the Baltimore Ravens. This is another pick I love, and I'm not someone out here that's going to try and tell you that the Ravens secondary is abysmal after it had a terrible season last year. Look at the roster, look at the depth they have. You've got Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, some other nice players in that back end as well. They just got absolutely annihilated with injuries. But I do think that Derek Stingley is someone that injects some youth here. If you get the player that he was in his freshman season at LSU, you're getting a really, really high upside player. So you look at someone who's approaching age 30 like a Marcus Peters, maybe you start to have a replacement plan in play by drafting Stingley here and get yourself another top-end DB to pair with Humphrey, who is a peanut puncher at this point in his career, forcing fumbles left and right. So I love the pick for the Ravens. There's a variety of options they could go. I've had them addressing interior offensive line in past mock drafts. I think that's an area of need. You can also go in the defensive front category. That's a group that is somewhat complete but aging. If you look at the likes of a Derek Wolfe, Calais Campbell, geez, I was blanking on his name. I was literally seeing him in my head in his Cardinals and Jaguars uniforms. Calais Campbell's getting up there in age as well, so you can obviously take a look at that interior defensive line position. Someone like a Jordan Davis who had incredible athletic measurables at the combine would be a fantastic option as well. At 15, Trent McDuffie goes off the board here to the Eagles, who obviously have Darius Slay in play right now, Avonte Maddox on that roster, but you can always add more depth into that cornerback room. Just like that pass rushing rotation, you can never have too much depth in the secondary, and Trent McDuffie, in my eyes, is a fantastic corner. Always in phase, really smooth in his ability to stick with receivers in and out of their breaks. I love what he brings to the table here, and I think he could be a fantastic boundary corner for this Eagles roster at 15 that has 3 picks in the first round. Their second, I have them going Garrett Wilson, the playmaker out of Ohio State. He's my top wide receiver in this class. Elite route running, moves like no one else can in this draft. Super smooth, good play strength as well. It's something you hear Daniel Jeremiah talk about for wide receivers. How do they block? How do they adjust to contested catches? Do they get pinballed around by physical defensive backs, or do they stand up to the competition and impose their will on defenders? So Wilson's someone I'm all over here at this number 16 spot. I think that this would be a slam dunk to pair him with Devontae Smith. It would make it 3 straight years of drafting a first-round receiver for the Eagles team, but I think that they've got the picks and the ammo to do so. However, keep an eye again on that Deshaun Watson situation with that draft capital. Jordan Davis at 17 here. I think this is a really underrated move for a Chargers team that needs some help stopping the run. This is a group that for Brandon Staley's standards was definitely a disappointment in 2021. I think adding an athletic interior player like Jordan Davis, who can essentially be an immovable force up front, plug up run lanes, and just be dominant, would be a huge asset to have at play here. I think that Linval Joseph, their current big man in the interior who's aging, going to turn 34 next fall, you need some more youth. You need some more depth. He was constantly jogging off the field, getting gassed late in games. Just watching some Chargers games, that was an issue for this team. So you can add some youth, some rotation ability, and obviously depth at a position that's very, very important for your whole well-rounded defense there. Kenny Pickett at number 18, the Saints get their quarterback here. Not exactly the highest ceiling in the world for the quarterback position, but a guy who can get the job done, and it's probably not the thing that Saints fans are wanting to hear. But I do think that Kenny Pickett has a better ceiling than we give him credit for. He makes throws on time and on target, and I think that for a team that has Michael Thomas that could potentially use some ammo to draft more receivers with later capital or bring in some options via free agency, you never know. So I think that, unfortunately, you don't have Sean Payton in town anymore to be the quarterback whisperer of this organization. But I do think that Kenny Pickett would be in a strong, or a strong culture, per se, with a team that has a strong enough defense led by new head coach Dennis Allen to get the job done and win some games playing defense and limiting turnovers on the offensive side. At 19, George Karlaftis falls down my board a little bit, but continues to go to the Eagles, who need edge depth. They just brought in Hassan Reddick via free agency. You've got Brandon Graham returning from injury, but you need to address that rotation. The Eagles had a very underwhelming pass rush last year. Quarterbacks were comfortable in the pocket, and that is a big issue for teams that are looking to be competitive. You've got Derek Barnett up in free agency, Ryan Kerrigan as well, so you got to address this position. Karlaftis doesn't have a super high ceiling, but he can play the run and rush the passer. Tyler Linderbaum at number 20 here out of Iowa to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need interior offensive line help. They've got some pieces. They've got some guys that can start at different spots, but Linderbaum would by far be their best player on that roster and on that offensive line day one. It's not the flashiest pick in the world. You just signed Trubisky today. I'm not sure he's going to be the starting quarterback or the franchise quarterback. More of a bridge situation is what it looks like to me, but this is a very good roster. They've got playmakers. They've got skill guys, and obviously defensive playmakers as well. Minka Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt. Go out, address the offensive line, and who knows? If you can run the football effectively with Najee Harris by upgrading this line, Trubisky might not have to do that much for this team. Devontae Wyatt at number 21 here to the Pats. Pair him with Christian Barmore, plug up the run lanes, and let Bill Belichick do his thing on the defensive side of the ball. Get him some more chess pieces to move around, and defensive line is a huge part of the defensive game. If you can win the line of scrimmage, you can do a lot of other things, and I think that Devontae Wyatt was someone that certainly helped his stock at the NFL Combine. At number 22, David Ojobo out of the University of Michigan, the guy rushing the side opposite to Aidan Hutchinson. Super high ceiling, has the ability to develop more as a player. Look what the Raiders did for a guy like Max Crosby. You can potentially pass along some of those traits, and let's face it, the AFC West, you're going to have to get after the quarterback. You now have a loaded division where your quarterback, Derek Carr, is pretty much inarguably the fourth best quarterback in the division. That's something insane to say. Derek Carr in some divisions could be the best quarterback. He could be the second best quarterback in a lot of tougher divisions. However, when you've got Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes as the guys you're stacking up against, you have got to do things to disrupt those other guys. And David Ojobo could do that. Him and Max Crosby getting after the passer. Yannick Ngakoue, I forget if he's a free agent or if he is returning, but you just need rotational depth. Look at some of the better teams in the last few years. They have depth and playmakers at that outside linebacker position or defensive end spot, depending on your scheme. I think Ojobo can bring a lot to the table here and be a very high upside player for this defense. Chris Olave at number 23 here to the Cards. They lost Christian Kirk today, who signed a big incentive-based deal with the Jacksonville Jags. Not a ton of that money was guaranteed. A lot of it, again, as I said, is incentive-based. However, I think that Chris Olave is someone the Cardinals could really use. You've got DeAndre Hopkins aging. His injuries, especially those hamstrings, are tightening up by the year. And I don't think Rondale Moore is the number 2 wide receiver. AJ Green is incredibly old. We'll see if the team brings him back. But I think that Olave is a deep threat with Kyler Murray. One of the best deep passers in the league would be a perfect combination. This is a player I've had going to the Raiders in the previous 2 mocks. Cowboy fans that were upset with me in the last mock draft, I apologize. I got to go Nakobe Dean here again. I looked at the board. I looked at the players available. And this is the best value in the draft. This is the best player available at this spot at number 24. You're talking about a linebacker that has the athletic intangibles that Nakobe Dean has, the speed, the athleticism to cover distance. And I don't really think there's a better alternative for you. You could go wide receiver, but a lot of the best wideouts on the board are gone at this point in time. You could argue, hey, I want Jameson Williams, but do you really want 2 wide receivers rehabbing from an ACL surgery in the same season? So I think that is a big fat no. I would say Nakobe Dean here again. With not many holes to fill on this roster, you could look at cornerback. I'm not sure if you get too crazy about any of the guys left on the board at this spot. Maybe you trade back. Offensive line is an area of need. I'm not sure how you want to address that position. I think the team just granted Lyle Collins the permission to seek a trade, but Terrence Steele can plug and play in that spot fine. He's not a fantastic option. Maybe you look at a Bernard Raymond here at number 24, but again, I think Nakobe Dean's the best value, the best day one impact playmaker. This is where I would go at that spot if I was Dallas. Speaking of Jameson Williams at number 25 here for the Buffalo Bills, I think this is a great fit because you can have the flexibility to wait with how Gabe Davis finished the season, taking another step forward this offseason, Stephon Diggs coming back. Maybe Emmanuel Sanders returns, who knows, but you'll have some depth at that position. Cole Beasley has been granted the ability to seek a trade. However, like I said, I think that the Bills have the patience in play to wait on Jameson Williams. They don't need him to be healthy day one, and when he is, him and Josh Allen could be a deadly combo downfield. Devin Llyod at number 26 here. You've got 2 big-name free agents for the Tennessee Titans defense. I think an off-ball linebacker would be a fantastic fit for this team. Devin Lloyd's stock fell a lot after some below-average testing results at the NFL Combine. His 40-yard dash wasn't that flattering. And his athletic measurables weren't as well, but the play speed, the tape is great. He's got long arms. He's able to make tackles from a distance, doesn't let guys get away from him. And with Rashad Evans and Jayon Brown hitting the open market, we'll see if they return. At the time of recording this episode, I have not seen any news regarding those two, so Devin Llyod is the pick here at 26. Zion Johnson for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Welcome back, Tom Brady. I'm very excited about that news. They need interior offensive line help. However, they lost Alex Kappa to the Cincinnati Bengals on a 4-year deal, and they also had Ali Marpet retire, so they were able to bring back Ryan Jensen to play center, but you now need some help at those other offensive line spots. Tom Brady needs to stay healthy, and obviously you got to have a run game as well, so we'll see who they bring in to play running back, who they resign, if it's Lenny or Rojo, or if they draft a guy. But I think Zion Johnson, who had a very, very impressive NFL Combine out of Boston College here, rose his draft stock enough to sneak into the late first round and be a pick here. At 28, I've got the Packers taking George Pickens, the highlight wide receiver out of the University of Georgia. A lot of athleticism here, a lot of upside, a really, really high ceiling as a matter of fact. However, we haven't really seen much of his underneath route game just because of the offense that was run at Georgia. I think he could be a bit of a raw prospect, 6'3", 200 pounds. Again, the athletic measurables are fantastic, though. I think you've got an opportunity for a really, really good player. Says he wants to mold his game after Davante Adams, and what better way to do that than to pair him with Davante Adams as a number 2 or number 3 receiver behind Allen Lazard and Davante. In the green and yellow, I think that George Pickens would certainly be welcomed by Aaron Rodgers and certainly a valued part of this offense. Bernard Raymond here at number 29 falls to the Miami Dolphins, the best offensive tackle left on my board. They could certainly use some more help protecting Tua. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater today to be the team's backup quarterback for this season. But again, give your prospective franchise quarterback a chance. Give him some help, protect him. And for what should be a pocket passer, give him some more time to drop back in the pocket and not make Tua scramble around as an injury-prone, smaller quarterback that is essentially more at risk to those nagging injuries. At number 30, I've got Andrew Booth out of Clemson headed to the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City is going to be in high-scoring games. They get the best punch from their opposing team. Everyone's looking to get a piece of the Chiefs these days. So when you've got Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have to be able to cover the back end. You've got teams that are going to be playing from behind, trying to play catch-up after your offense lights it up. Andrew Booth, I think, is the best cornerback left on the board. I have had Khair Alam at this spot in previous mocks, but I am now officially settled in. I think Andrew Booth is the better corner here. After watching some more tape, I think he's more fundamentally sound and has a higher ceiling, whereas I think Alam could be a nice plug-and-play number 2 corner. I think Andrew Booth has more of an opportunity to be a lower-end 1 as his ultimate ceiling here in the NFL. At number 31, I've got Kyler Gordon, the defensive back out of Washington, DBU, if you know what I mean. All of the secondary players they've pumped into the NFL over the last 4 or 5 seasons. The other guy, when we talk about the 2 in this year's draft class with Trent McDuffie as well, who I'm a huge fan of. But Cincinnati Bengals fans, I know you want to go offensive line. I've essentially used up all of the first-round worthy linemen in my book. Now, if there's someone else available that you want to see in a future mock or you'd like to debate me about, I love to hear your guys' comments and thoughts, so drop those down in the comment section below. But hear me out. You draft Kyler Gordon, he becomes a starter, and you don't have to play Eli Apple as your starting quarterback 2 anymore. You can have Chidobe Awuzie and Kyler Gordon manning the boundary positions for this team, Mike Hilton in the slot, and hopefully if everyone stays healthy, you don't have to hear Eli Apple's name or watch him make a fool of himself all that much next season. Of course, the guy who was absolutely burnt toast and let Cooper Kupp annihilate you down the stretch of that Super Bowl. Sorry to bring up some painful memories there, but Kyler Gordon can solve that issue. Unfortunately, not an offensive line spot. Bernard Raymond goes a little bit early, who's the guy who I've had mocked here previously, but I think this does fill a position of need. And Boye Mafe here, the edge out of Minnesota, is the final pick of today's mock draft, heading to the Lions. Again, as I said earlier on, you're expected to release Trey Flowers. Michael Brocker's another spot where he could line up either at, I would say, Mafe could fulfill the interior defensive end spot for this team, or he could be a bit of an oversized walk-up linebacker like Trey Flowers was. It wasn't a fantastic scheme fit. It's been pretty underproductive since signing with the Lions back in, 2019. So I think this would be a nice pick for Detroit. You miss out on Aidan Hutchinson. You get yourself a nice upside player, someone who's still a bit raw, could use some developing. But I think that Boye Mafe and adding to that defensive line and front 7 would be a nice way to go for this Lions team here at 32. So that'll conclude today's episode, mock draft number 3 for the 2022 season. If you enjoyed today's video, drop down and leave it a like so other NFL football fans out there can find my content. As always, leave your comments down the comment section below. I'd be happy to get back to any of you guys. Let me know your thoughts on today's draft, who you want to see your team pick, and what some of my favorite or what were some of your favorite picks of mine in today's episode. I'm always looking for you guys to join in on the discussion. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.